Morning, Dan and Amy. Well, let's get right to it. Two special guests with two books out. Newt Gingrich, former House Speaker, of course, has a new spy novel, I would say, out. It's called Treason. It's a follow-up to his bestseller last year, Duplicity. It's kind of fun when an intellectual like Gingrich goes into the world of fiction. It reminds me of Bill Buckley and his Blackford Oaks spy novels. And then his wife, Callista Gingrich, she's got a new installment in the LSB Elephant children's book series.
And I have the first one.
Oh, you do?
Yes, my kids love that book.
All right. And then the latest one is Hail to the Chief, which explores how past presidents have defined America's character. We're pleased now to be joined by Newt and Callista Gingrich. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to be with you. And by the way, we're looking forward to coming out to Anderson's bookstore in the near future. So it's always great to be in Chicago.
Okay, all right, great. And we'll make sure to note those book signings when they come to pass. So here's first question for Speaker Gingrich. The little Trump versus big Trump formulation that has gotten so much play. In the debate the other night and per your conversations with Mr. Trump, did you see the big Trump the other night, and are we going to see the big Trump for the final 2 weeks?
Well, I thought we saw big Trump the other night. Callista and I were fortunate enough to be watching the debate with about 120 Republican activists in Orange County, California. And after the debate, I said, how many of you think that Trump did better than you expected? 3/4 of the hands went up. And I think he handled the questions well and straightforward. Hillary a couple of times tried to bait him back onto old source points, and he ignored every one of them. My hope is that that's what we're going to see from now to Election Day, is when he's big, when he talks about creating jobs, he talks about controlling the border, he talks about fixing Washington and cleaning up the corruption. Then he's rolling, and then people get it. When he gets into some of these petty things, I think he loses ground.
But with less than, 20 days till the election, how can he gain support among women and minorities? Because that's so important if you want to get to the White House.
Well, I think it's very important. And he has said more about trying to help African Americans and trying to help the inner city than any Republican presidential candidate I can remember. And I think that we're now learning, for example, that the meeting he tried to hold in the south side of Chicago was deliberately disrupted by people being paid by the Clinton campaign because they were so afraid of the effect of having somebody like Trump actually come into the South Side and actually talk about the violence level. And, I think there have been 1,000 more shootings this year in Chicago than last year. Mm-hmm. I think Trump, in that sense, is really trying to reach out and say to people, we can do much better than this. So I think he'll continue to do that. He'll continue to gain support. And again, it's going to be incremental. He's not going to carry the African American vote, but I think he will do better than any Republican candidate in modern times.
Was it a mistake at the debate the other night to say that, I'm going to keep you in suspense in terms of accepting the results of the election, particularly, obviously, if he loses?
That's a great irony because, of course, every reporter should have remembered that Al Gore filed a lawsuit and took 35 days and went to the Supreme Court. And nobody questioned the legitimacy and his right to do that. I think Trump, in that sense, is not far off from what Gore was. And he's saying, look, let's wait and see. Let's make sure that you don't have massive vote theft in Philadelphia. When you're dealing with, as we now know, because the tapes have been available, we have a guy who entered the White House over 300 times during this administration who is on tape saying that he was paid to try to disrupt Trump rallies. Well, that kind of stuff going on around you, it's fair to say, I'm going to be a little cautious here. Reagan used to say, trust but verify.
Well, right, and people also not remembering that Hillary Clinton, after the 2000 election, Senator-elect Hillary Clinton then suggested doing away with the Electoral College because of the result of Gore winning the popular vote and losing the Electoral College. I wonder if that would be her position today, were Trump to win the popular vote but lose the Electoral College.
Well, and, of course, what you have is the news media knew they were going to be horrified by something Trump said that night. They just didn't know what it was.
And so
that's this game.
And so where do you? I mean, you've been through a lot of election cycles. Where do you, just kind of at a visceral level, feel this election is? Is it still within Trump's grasp, or do you feel like it's really a long shot at this point, as the D.C. press corps is suggesting it is?
Look, my personal gut instinct is he'll probably win. But the truth is, nobody knows anything. Remember, all the people telling you about the election are the people who got the Republican nomination wrong for 6 months. They don't know anything more now than they did then. The lesson of Brexit and Britain was that the polls were totally wrong. Every single poll was wrong. The political elites were wrong. So I don't know. I mean, and again, you have a good example in Chicago. If Hillary can get a Barack Obama-sized turnout in the black community, she'll be in much better shape. But if she can't, if in fact, when we think about it, a lot of African Americans think, it hasn't worked out all that well, and I don't particularly think she can do the job. She can't possibly carry a full number of states if that vote drops off, because she has to have an Obama-sized turnout.
If you are right, your gut instinct is right, and that Trump wins, how concerned are you about the work that would need to be done to repair or improve the relationship between Donald Trump and the gentleman I suppose would still be the Speaker of the House per a Trump victory, Paul Ryan?
Well, they're going to have to sit down and have breakfast and talk it through. But that's the nature of this business. I mean, the Congress is independent of the president. It's elected independently. I always used to tell people, congressmen work with the president. They never work for the president. But at the same time, Trump has been a pretty successful guy at creating relationships and making deals. And I suspect the minute he wins the election that he will reach out, not just to the Republicans, but he knows Chuck Schumer very well, and Schumer's the next Democratic leader in the Senate. I suspect they can sit down and have a very positive talk about getting some things done.
Now, you had said the other day that to be president, you need to have great discipline, and that Donald Trump is not the most disciplined candidate. Hillary Clinton is disciplined, but she's very corrupt. Can you just elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, look, I think this, Secretary Clinton is the most dishonest and most corrupt person, and most radical. She's much more radical than Obama. Ever to be nominated by either major party. On the other hand, she's a very disciplined professional. Trump is a gifted amateur who has come an amazing distance in his first race. He's never ran for office before, knocked out 16 people in the Republican primaries, gets the largest vote in the history of the Republican Party. But he clearly has, as most amateurs would, he doesn't have the sheer iron discipline of a professional who's done this. Hillary's been at this for 46 years, going back to Joe Lieberman's first race for the state Senate in 1970. So she had a long depth of experience. He's been at it for a year and a half.
But so what is it like when you say to Donald Trump, because I know you mentioned this before, that you talk to him about message discipline and you consult him on various matters in terms of presentation and campaign strategy and tactics. When he goes off the highway into the wilderness from time to time on issues, particularly of a personal nature to him, and makes the race about him rather than the American people, how does he respond when you go to him and say, Donald, what are you doing?
He's very defensive. He learned over a long business career to always counterpunch. And he's done it very successfully. He's become a billionaire doing it. And he's also won the Republican nomination doing it. So when you say to him, maybe that doesn't work in a general election, he has to go against all of his life experience not to counterpunch. And he's gotten much better. He does learn. If you look at those two debates, and Callista and I discussed this the other night, he was better in the second debate than he was in the first debate. He was better in the third debate than he was in the second. My guess is there are two more debates. He keeps improving because he is smart and he is learning very fast. But as somebody who's never done it before, he just had a lot to learn.
Let me ask you a question now with the alternate hypothetical playing out, which is Hillary Clinton wins the presidency. Where do you think the Republican Party and, more importantly, the conservative movement goes from there if Hillary is victorious?
That depends very greatly on Hillary Clinton. If she's the new Hillary Clinton, who is Bernie Sanders' best friend, and she sends up radical judges and she sends up radical proposals, and she wants to replace Obamacare with a Canadian-style system, which she has said in some speeches, then the Republican Party will be unified in opposing her. If, on the other hand, she says, well, I said all that stuff during the general election, but as you know, I believe my private positions aren't the same as my public. I can really get along with you guys. let's do a kind of deal we can cut, then she would cause real turmoil in the Republican Party. So she has it in her power to either unify the Republicans against her or to draw a split between the establishment Republicans who would work with her and the grassroots Republicans who will be deeply opposed to her. And I think she's going to have to make that decision if she wins the election.
All right. After that depressing prospect, we need to talk about Ellis the elephant.
There you go. Happiness is here.
Yes.
Callista?
Hi, Callista.
Hi, thanks for having us this morning.
Yeah, so we have your first installment of Ellis the Elephant, and just tell us about your new book.
Sure. My new book is Hail to the Chief. It's book number 6 in the Ellis the Elephant series. And this is a series that offers a guided tour of American history for 4 to 8-year-olds. And in my new book, Ellis meets some of America's greatest presidents and discovers how they've really led our country throughout American history. And as we're about to elect our 45th president, it's so important for our young people to understand what the presidency means. And really, to do this, they have to study our greatest leaders. And Hail to the Chief will help them do just that.
What's the feedback you get? I know you guys do a lot of book signing tours and that sort of thing. What's the feedback you get from parents in terms of the impact these books have on sparking an interest among their kids in American history and civics?
Right. We get a good feedback from the parents, moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas. They're buying Ellis the Elephant books for their young people in their life. And when I first started writing this series in 2011, I was really surprised to learn how few books there are written for 4 to 8-year-olds about American history. My books are really meant to serve as an introduction to the key moments that have shaped our nation. And I find that most kids are smart and eager to learn. And the more they learn about our history, the more they will love America.
Maybe that's the Ellis the Elephant books can replace the Howard Zinn versions of history on college campuses. Maybe that could be an improvement.
There you go. Well, so few of our kids are learning American history right now, and unfortunately, many of our schools are failing to teach our history, including our founding principles and our values. And instead, kids are learning revisionist and politically correct history. As a consequence, are really missing out on the basics. So, I believe that we owe it to our kids to give them the tools they need at a very early age so they can begin to learn about the greatness of this nation.
I want to get your new book because I want to hear about Andrew Jackson's chaotic inaugural party.
Well, that really was an amazing moment. At his party, it was one of the most raucous moments in our history, complete with broken dishes, broken glasses, spilled liquor, mud on the couches and carpets. The White House was so crowded with Jackson's rough and tumble supporters that he was forced to escape to a hotel across the street. So really a pretty amazing moment, unlike any other inaugural party in our history.
That'll be nothing if Trump wins and you got Trump after dark at the White House. The other presidents that are profiled, stories that are told in this latest installment of the Ellis the Elephant series.
Right. So I highlight 13 of what I consider to be the most important and influential presidents. Some of them include George Washington, as he's sworn in as our first president, Andrew Jackson, as he welcomes thousands of Americans to the White House, Abraham Lincoln, as he delivers the Gettysburg Address, Theodore Roosevelt, as he builds our national park system, and Lyndon Johnson, as he signs the Civil Rights Act. So Americans who have really shaped our history.
All right, she is Callista Gingrich, the latest in the Ellis the Elephant children's book series, Hail to the Chief, which is out. And Newt Gingrich, who also joined us, of course, the former House Speaker. He's got a new novel following on his novel last year, Duplicity. The new novel released earlier this month, Treason, another spy novel of sorts. Looks very interesting. Newt and Callista Gingrich, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Great to see you. We'll see you at Anderson's in a few weeks.
Great. Very good.
Thank you. And they joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.